Have you ever asked a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the response was, I want to be a generalist. Never happened to me. We don't offer generalists as a career choice, but maybe we should. You know, the world is changing so rapidly that traditional jobs are disappearing, and we barely even notice it. When was the last time you booked a flight or even a hotel room with your travel agent? Companies like Amazon and Airbnb and Uber and thousands of other online businesses are disrupting their traditional jobs and disrupting some of us out of a job. I can speak from experience. In 1981, when I graduated college, I had the opportunity to apprentice as a color separator. Now, this was actually a very prestigious and high-paying position in the printing trades. There were maybe 300 people in the world that knew how to do this, how to operate these very expensive multi-$100,000 digital color scanners. And my boss, my employer, told me at the time, you know, Tim, once you get your journeyman's card, you'll be able to go anywhere in the world and get a job. Why, you will be set for life. Now, this job involved taking the film from a digital camera. Some of you are starting to see the problem already, right? I took the film from a traditional camera. Did I say digital? We all think that way these days. I took the film from a traditional camera and I turned it into data for a computer. Okay. Today, that is an utterly useless skill. The way you survive this kind of disruption, at least for me, is by becoming a generalist. So far in my career, I've done a number of things. Yes, I've been an educator and a curriculum designer and a software developer and web developer, a musician and a recording engineer, an artist, designer, writer, online publisher, and I'm sure there are things that I'm forgetting. Some things we don't even do anymore. Oh yeah, like multimedia designer. Who creates interactive CD-ROMs anymore? Nobody. But I did that too. Buckminster Fuller called himself a generalist. That was where I got the name. Buckminster Fuller was an engineer and an architect and a design philosopher. And at 32 years old, when the country was having some very hard times, he was also a failure in his own eyes. His company had gone out of business. He had no savings. He had contemplated suicide so that the insurance money could provide for his family. It was a very low point in his life. But instead, he reinvented himself. He embarked on an experiment to discover just how much he could accomplish through the course of his life with the potential to benefit all of humanity. Now, Buckminster Fuller's experiment today continues to influence art and architecture, aerospace engineering, and generalists like me. In 1981, the printing industry was a very different place. And I'll tell you about that in a moment. To get around this idea of what is a generalist, I had to think about this. I had no idea. He was the first person I heard call himself a generalist. I said, well, what is this? How do you become one? Well, it turns out that a generalist is someone who basically combines their creative talent and their analytical skills and apply it towards an interesting problem. And it can be any problem as long as it's interesting. Generalists can survive in a corporate environment as managers. They make very good managers, but they really thrive when they're pursuing their own passions. I also discovered that generalists historically have been revolutionaries, disruptors, troublemakers, and kind of dangerous people. Johannes Gutenberg was a 15th century goldsmith and gemstone cutter when he invented the printing press. And he made books affordable to everyone in Europe. Up to that time, books were hand-copied by monk calligraphers, making the churches the gatekeepers of knowledge. Once the printing press hit the streets, all hell broke loose as people learned to read, started making scientific discoveries, explored the world, and started to revolt against monarchs. More contemporary for us, Stephen Jobs, creator of the Macintosh, he was a generalist. He wanted to give everyone a personal computer. He had no idea what giving everyone a personal computer was going to do, and that didn't matter. He just knew it would be a good thing. He just went ahead and did it. Well, his Macintosh almost failed. But then this thing called desktop publishing came along, and once creative professionals realized that they no longer had to rely upon specialists to finish their work, the world was never going to be the same. You see, in 1981, the printing industry employed 1.3 million people, and over half of them were specialists. They were craftsmen. They were typesetters and layout artists and cameramen and lithographic strippers and plate makers and proofers. And they all had a role in taking the artboards from a designer and turning it into something that could be put onto a printing press. There were computers that could do that work, but at the time, these computers cost about $1 million, and most printing companies couldn't afford them. But then along came desktop publishing, and in the span of about 15 years, all of that craft work moved from the shop floors of the printing companies to the desktops of the design studios. And in that process, 400,000 jobs disappeared. Now, a lot of my coworkers at that time suddenly found themselves without a career. Personally, I did okay because I embraced desktop publishing. I ended up becoming one of the industry's pioneers and a writer and an educator and consultant, and it worked out okay for me. I became a generalist. You might be wondering, is my job under any kind of a threat? Will my career be disrupted? I think the way that you can start to get an answer for yourself is by asking what technologies are out there that could potentially do my job if it was cheaper and if it was better. You see, because what happens is over the course of about 20 years, these technologies are developed, these things like 3D printing, for example, or it's whatever it is. It's developed in a lab someplace, and people create it, and it's very esoteric, and it doesn't do very much, but it's kind of cool. But then as time goes by, the price comes down to the point where everybody can afford it. I just bought a 3D printer for $200, and it works great. It doesn't produce what I could put on a store shelf, but it's good enough for my purposes. Once the price of a technology comes down, and that may take 10 years, it may take 20 years, then what happens is the quality starts going up. So the cost comes down, the quality goes up, and at the point where these two cross, you can get very good quality, you can get store-bought quality, or you can get a service company quality, and you can do it yourself for not a lot of money. That's when you see disruption. So for you, ask yourself, is there anything out there today that I'm reading about in the newspaper, that I'm reading about on social media, that could potentially replace my job? If the answer is yes, then look 10, 20 years down the line and say, will I still be doing this? Or maybe, should I become a generalist? Now, if you want to follow a path like mine, you can do it with 3 simple steps. You can prepare yourself by developing a generalist mindset. First, cultivate your creativity. Now, I've had a lot of people say to me, Tim, I don't have a creative bone in my body. Has anybody ever said that here? Yeah, you've thought that? Well, it's not true, all right? It is not true. I don't believe it's possible. What some people have is a fear of being judged based on their first efforts at something that is actually very difficult, all right? When I learned to play guitar, I was actually flat on my back in a hospital bed for 3 months and bought a guitar for $35. Not a very good one, but good enough to learn. And I had to take my right hand, and I had to position the fingers of my left hand on the fretboard and then make a vice grip so I could strum the chords. And it was hard, and it was terrible. But I kept at it. And eventually, I became a musician. Like a friend of mine always says about violin players, he says, you know, I have so much respect for violinists because you work really, really hard for 7 years just to suck. And he's so right. So cultivate your creativity. It's absolutely worth it. The next thing you can do is continue learning. You know, there are maker spaces popping up all over the country. We have one right here in Evansville, Indiana, in the basement of Innovation Point, where you can learn 3D printing and computer-aided manufacturing and how to prototype your own digital devices. It's a great opportunity for everyone. You can go to Udemy and you can sign up for courses on how to build up websites and iPhone applications. Or if there's something particular that you want to know how to do, someone has made a YouTube video showing you exactly how to do it. A couple days ago, I learned how to wave solder so I could repair an iPhone, and a few days before that, I learned how I could make a crucible so I could cast my own aluminum. All on YouTube, my friends. We have the knowledge of the world at our fingertips. And the third thing is be adventurous. Now, I decided to start a coffee roasting company here in Evansville. My decision was not difficult. I simply bought a home roaster, a little drum roaster, and I started playing with it, and I figured out that I could roast better coffee than what I could buy in the store. I shared it with some friends. Based on their feedback, I decided to order a commercial roaster from a manufacturer. I didn't quit my day job. I didn't spend my life savings. I didn't worry about whether it would be a success or a failure. I didn't even write a business plan. I just thought to myself, this is a good idea. I should do this. My wife happens to agree with me, so we're doing it. It's all about just being adventurous and enjoying the opportunities that you have. So, my advice to everyone is to be a generalist, to pursue your passions and create your own opportunities. And remember that every disruption is a new opportunity when you're a generalist. Thank you.